Take myself off of mute. Hi, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well today. I want to, first of all, introduce myself. My name is Davida Johnson. I'm the Managing Director for the UCLA Office of Advanced Research Computing. It's great to see so many lively faces today, and I'm honored to welcome you to the inaugural Innovate at UCLA, How She Built This series, which is a take on the popular Guy Raz podcast called How I Built This. I want to thank and recognize the Innovate at UCLA WIT Task Force, who, as a community, developed this quarterly series together to provide valuable mentorship, connection, and learning opportunities to the women of Innovate at UCLA, and to spotlight to the whole Innovate at UCLA community the achievements, the stories, the challenges, and the roadmaps of extraordinary female executives in technology. I also want to take this time to acknowledge February as Black History Month, a time where many organizations, schools, communities, families, and individuals are celebrating and highlighting the countless achievements of African Americans throughout history and today. If you were not aware, Black History Month originated from Dr. Carter Woodson in 1928 as a week-long event when he came to learn that Black people carried important knowledge from their lived experiences. And he set out to re-educate Black communities about the truth of our history. Black History Month was formally established in 1976, which broadened its educational effort to all communities. And given a theme every year since 1928, this year's theme is Black Health and Wellness. I'd now like to introduce you to Piper O'Brien. Piper was last year's task force co-chair, that's a little hard to say, along with Heidi Pease, and Piper is our moderator for today. Piper, I'll turn it over to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Davida. Hello, everyone. I'm super, super excited to be here today and be your moderator and be able to kick off this amazing series of How She Built This. As Davida mentioned, I had the honor of being the WIT co-chair with Heidi, and we have been planning for some time to bring this amazing series to you. Not only are we all very excited about this, being females in tech, but just seeing the need for this type of community that can inspire and support and mentor other females and be supported by the men in the industry as well. We appreciate you guys as well. Today we have some amazing speakers, including Teresa Miller, CIO of Lionsgate, Kelly Hamilton, CIO of Sony, and Lucy Avitz. I'm sorry, I butcher this every time. Avitzian, CIO of UCLA. So first off, what I'm going to do is if we can start with a short personal introduction and tell us maybe a sentence or two about your company and your career path to get there. I think this is really going to help highlight this series today, which is how she built this, and it's more from the corporate stance. So there's different ways that women can be successful, especially in tech specifically, and this one highlights how women got to the top from the corporate scope of it. So Teresa, would you like to start us off?
Sure. I'm Teresa Miller. I'm the CIO of Lionsgate Entertainment. Also next year's, or this, I guess it's this year's committee chair for women in technology at Innovate at UCLA. I also served as a prior exec chair for Innovate at UCLA. Very passionate about technology and about women in technology. I also sit on the board for Women in Technology Hollywood, and I'm a mentor for STEM Advantage. So some of those organizations that have really allowed me to give back to the community. And just kind of talking about my career, we're jumping into that, right, Piper, as the first question? Sure. So I have kind of a traditional, yes. I came up the IT ladder from a traditional way. I did study information technology in college, knew that it was something I wanted to do, knew that it was a great fit for me. Started out as a developer and then, got a little bit bored and was trying to figure out what to do next. Did a couple of years in internal audit, and that allowed me to get a lot of experience in entertainment. I was working in entertainment at the time, and really allowed me to get back into IT in a management position and then just kind of work my way up from there. And got a great opportunity at Lionsgate because the CIO, of Lionsgate at the time was looking for a successor, and I was working with him as a consultant, and we just really had a great working relationship. So I got that unique opportunity to come in and really build a team at Lionsgate and then work my way into the CIO spot. And I've been with Lionsgate actually for 17 years and been CIO now this is my 10th year. So quite a track record, and I'm very proud of and love the company and love the entertainment business.
Amazing. Thank you so much. So that is one path of how a well-known CIO got to the top. Let's look at, let's go to Kelly, who is also in entertainment, to see what her path was.
Well, thank you, Piper. So I took a very different path. I don't know if Teresa's path is maybe the more common path. Not sure mine is. So Kelly Hamilton, I'm the CIO at Sony Pictures, and I've been in the role for almost 5 months. So still pretty new. I think I'm allowed to claim new for 6 months, I think. So I'm gonna run with that. Before that, I was leading a team that we called the Finance Transformation Team, which really meant working with the CFO and many of the leaders within his organization on a huge chunk of a transformation vision. It was people, process, technology, all wrapped into one. Before that, I spent a decade in strategy and management consulting. And before that, I worked at a small company that we designed and made apparel and products in the action sports industry. This is not a common path, I would guess. I didn't study information technology or computer science. I have a degree in biology. My second degree is in philosophy. I specialized in ethics. So it wasn't, I'd say, a predicted or known career path for me. But I love technology. I have this very core belief in what technology can do for humans and what that relationship looks like. I mean, my coding skills and the members of my team who are on this call will all attest. I say this often, my coding skills are rubbish. I can do it. It's not that I can't, but most of my team is going to be better at me than that at me. That's not what I'm here to do. I'm here to help unleash the power of what they can do for our organization. So it wasn't something that I had necessarily anticipated, I thought deeply about, but to me, it was a great opportunity to contribute to a company that I think is fantastic. I mean, I think Sony Pictures is an amazing place to be. I think we've got a wonderful group of people, and to me, it's a matter of how do we let technology do the best we can for the company, which I think is a great place to be and a great team to work with. So maybe not the most traditional path, but it's the one I walk down.
Amazing. Thank you, Kelly. And both paths led to the kind of the same end, shall we say, or not the end, the same level, shall we say. And last, but definitely not least, Lucy, could you please share with us your path?
Happy to do that. Lucy Avatisian, I'm the Associate Vice Chancellor, Chief Information Officer for UCLA. I have overarching responsibility for academic and administrative IT on campus. In this role, I see myself as a partner with our leaders and key constituents throughout the campus to hopefully inform and then enable the vision, their roadmap through technology. I've spent all my career in higher education and I'm committed to the mission. I started at UCLA about 2 years ago during COVID, so it's been a very interesting journey. Shortly after I started here, I was invited to join the board of Innovate at UCLA, and I'm grateful for this opportunity. I'm actually very passionate about the work that we're starting as part of the Innovate Women in Technology group, and I really look forward to meeting and learning from accomplished leaders, women leaders in the industry as we continue offering this series. As it relates to my journey, so I don't have a degree in technology. I double majored in broadcast journalism and political science, and then later got my MBA, all from USC. During my undergraduate years, I had an opportunity to be a work study in central IT. And I learned a lot there and developed passion for technology. I was always interested to learn more. And after graduating, I had an opportunity to pursue my dream of being an on-camera reporter. And the two small opportunities that I got in Medford and Abilene, and Medford, Oregon, and Abilene, Texas, were just not going to help me pay my student loans or stop depending on my parents' support. So I was offered an opportunity in central IT, and I took it. And I started doing web development and design and content development, and then looked into programming. I loved the small wins, but I knew in my heart that that wasn't what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And so then I started exploring business analysis and project management, change management, had a great opportunity to do enterprise-wide implementations and learned so much. And later went into leading the applications and data vertical for central IT, and then became a deputy CIO where I led the digital transformation for USC. And then I landed an opportunity here. Not once did I ever think I would be a CIO. It wasn't a goal 10 years ago that I had to achieve. It just happened to be the right thing because the opportunities for change here that I heard from my leaders were inspirational, and I just wanted to be part of that.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing. So now that all three of you have kind of shared your career path and how you got there, let's get into some questions that I'm sure a lot of us have asked and been curious about. I know I have been. So to start off, how do you play the long game and patiently move your pawns? I know you all kind of highlighted a theme of, the motivation to grow and move forward. So what suggestions do you have on playing that long game? Don't all jump in at once.
I can start that off. So for me, really, my relationships have been very, very important throughout my career. So I would say, that focus on, building a partnership with the business units, making those connections and networking, definitely with outside of your organization, but also within your organization, because you never really know where the next opportunity is going to come from. Some of the things that I did early in my career was really volunteer to take on, more matrix kind of management roles. I led a lot of the efforts in mergers and acquisitions, for example, at the companies I worked at, led some of the larger enterprise projects. And that's a great way to, meet different people within your organization, hear about different opportunities. You never really know, as you heard from both Lucy and Kelly, you never really know where something is going to pique your interest. And everything that you do, it adds to your resume, right? It adds to your experience. And again, there might be another opportunity out there that, it was maybe one thing you did a couple of years ago, but that's really going to lead someone to point that out and say, hey, that person has experience in that and maybe might be a good fit. So I think focusing on relationships is something I've done throughout my career. So that's what I would point out.
Amazing.
I could share. I think for me, it's not shying away from challenging opportunities, really looking for that stretch opportunity. And at times it's been difficult to get into that, knowing that you don't have all the answers, you don't have all the experience, and it's going to be a challenging road ahead, but just volunteering for the next difficult project or the next opportunity to collaborate with a different group and build relationships and expertise and learn along the way. I share Teresa's comments about investing in relationships. And I think one other thing that oftentimes I think women don't do enough of is sharing our accomplishments and our highlights and demonstrating the value that we bring to the organization. So knowing how to do that at the right time with the right people is very important. But I think the one that I always go back to is, trying different things, always raising your hand and offering to help and going for those stretch opportunities.
So I suppose I agree completely with both of them. I think about too with the relationships, it's great to have good relationships and good trusting relationships with maybe people that you work closely with day to day, maybe others further away in the organization, but people who will give you candid feedback. All of us are imperfect. We're all human. Literally not a single person amongst us is perfect. Who I think tend to do best are the people who can actually get good feedback out of others. It's someone being willing to tell you, hey, you did a great job on that for these reasons. And then you can kind of like file away, okay, do more of that. That was good. Or people tell you, ooh, that didn't work. And it's not in a way that's critical. You don't feel threatened by it. It's in your own best interest. So making sure that you've got kind of this cadre of folks around you in your orbit, again, wherever they come from, that will give you that candid feedback that, by the way, sometimes it smarts. It doesn't feel good to be told you didn't do something well. But if you're not told, again, we're not perfect and none of us have that level of perfection and self-awareness to know. And so, to be making sure beyond just having a great network of people who are supportive and sponsor you and taking on challenges, but when you do those things, people who are going to tell you what's working and what's not working for you, so you can continue to build skills, to refine your style, to learn how to modulate your style, to work more effectively in different environments, I think is incredibly important to, I suppose, Piper, as you said it, to move your pawns.
Amazing. Yes. Thank you for sharing. To lead that segues kind of into the next question, how do you show the strategic value of your organization?
I'll jump in. It starts with those relationships, right? Really tough to tell someone about the strategic value and help them understand it when you don't have a relationship with them. You become kind of this thing, this entity, this department that they don't know and they don't have a relationship with. By the way, whether it's your department, it's your organization's brand more holistically. That plays at all levels. It's both an individual, a team, a company level. You need a relationship, you need a permission to engage. And that we're all human. That all starts with how you connect as individuals. And that gives you those opportunities and platforms to tie what you do and how you do it into what that other person or team is trying to do and achieve. In many organizations, folks in the technology world are in a support function role, with the exception of if you're a core technology company, then no, that is what it is. But for Sony Pictures, we don't make the movies. That's not our jobs. We're not out there writing screenplays and, camera on shoulder kind of filming something. No, we are doing something else. We're doing something that supports those people. So building a deep relationship where you understand their problems so that you can use technology to solve those problems gives you that remit to then, point out or make clear when you've been able to do that. And by the way, the best thing you can do, have such a great relationship that they do it for you. They're the ones talking about all the great things you did for them. And then, job done. You can stand back and just, thank you, smile, nod, and go on your way. But it's a lot of work. That is a ton of work to invest in those relationships to get to that state. And, up until then, I imagine Teresa and Lucy will share some of the tips or tricks that they've used along the way while you're building those relationships.
I can share. I think similar to what you heard, the aligning the IT strategic roadmap with the mission and the vision of the organization is extremely important. I think gone are the days where technology leaders make decisions alone, right? So it's all about, understanding where the university wants to go and what is the role of technology in that? How are we going to enable that? In some cases also inform that, because there may be opportunities that aren't known to our leaders of how technology can even do things bigger than their vision is. I think as I think about student experience and a lot of great things that we could do to just enhance our constituent experience campus-wide. When I joined, unfortunately, as I mentioned earlier, during COVID, it's really, really hard to build those relationships. I think you heard Kelly talk about relationships. I think those are extremely important. And I took the first 2-3 months to just get to know our key leaders campus-wide. And I had the same set of questions that I asked every one of them as to what challenges were they experiencing and how did they see technology's role in enabling their roadmap and their vision. And I think it was very, very important to me to understand that and to with them prioritize what are we going to focus on. One of the key things that I've been focused on is introducing an IT governance model that will allow for these decisions to happen in in partnership with the campus constituents and very diverse groups of individuals, be it students and faculty and staff, representing different areas of the organization. Also, I think another way to show the strategic value is being agile and being a good partner. I think especially now during this challenging times, I think of the work that my team is doing just with COVID compliance, whether it's OSHA regulations or LA County different rules that change every time, and how we need to reprioritize work and be very, very responsive and agile in addressing the needs of the organization. And I actually, one other thing is, and that I think is important, is recognizing and celebrating these accomplishments. I'm actually coming from another meeting where we were celebrating our milestone of introducing a learning management system to the campus in 9 months. And that was a huge accomplishment. And I was so thrilled that our executive sponsors were there and addressed that meeting and thanked the team, because bringing awareness to our executive leadership that we are actually making a difference and adding value is also important, and celebrating that with them is important.
It is important, Lucy. I would add to that I do all those things, and sometimes I really have to put on my marketing hat for the organization, right? So I really like to recognize my team when they accomplish something, and love to do that with the business owners as well. So I think that's quite motivational for the team, but also a really great way to publicize everything that we're doing for the organization. So historically, that's something I've done quite a bit. And then I will just say, with the pandemic, it's really been a great way to showcase IT, right? And within our company, our CEO started sending out a weekly newsletter, and he wanted to mention people, and every single opportunity we got to mention someone, I put somebody forward, because I just know the team's working so hard and we were doing so many things. And a great example of people getting mentioned in the CEO letter, and that being showing that IT is great, but then also these individuals are doing a great job. And so I think that to show the strategic value, obviously we have our reporting and our statistics and our analytics and our key performance indicators, but also that day-to-day kind of marketing and reminders and strategic partnerships with our business units and getting our stakeholders to come in on that recognition goes a long way.
Amazing, thank you. That rolls into the next question. How did you build your team, and how much of an impact did that have on you getting to where you are? Anyone?
I'll go for it again. I mean, look, your team's everything. As a leader, you are absolutely nothing without your team. Nothing. We're not the people out there deploying, laptops to people. We're not the people out there, writing code. We're not running the fiber cabling through buildings. We are not doing any of that. Our teams are doing all of that. And so, to me, it's really important as a leader. I think our job is to set clarity of vision. What are we about? What are expectations in terms of how we operate, operating with integrity and not taking certain kinds of shortcuts, all of that stuff. It's really important you level set that, but without that, it's all about your team, in which case, at Sony Pictures, we focus a lot on servant leadership, both within the IT department, but more broadly. And for that to be successful, you've really got two key components, right? You need to have clarity of what is our purpose here? What's our mission? What are we trying to achieve? And then you need competency. And so as a leader, you provide clarity of mission and purpose, and then you help make sure that your teams have the competency they need to do their piece of that job, whatever that might be. But it's funny, people think about, like, I can't imagine a world without having a great team. And a great team is both them as individuals, and it's them how they work together. I talk to them as if we are a soccer team, mostly because I've been watching a lot of Ted Lasso and I quite like it. And it's, as the leader, you're the coach. And so it's your job to kind of help those players to improve their skills, to see where there's opportunities to do better. But watch a great sports team. And actually, it applies to all sports. They coach each other just as much. And so that's the other piece I've been working on with my team quite a bit is, yes, we all have individual kind of coach team member relationships, but you're out there seeing a bunch of stuff I'm not seeing. And yeah, you may be a coach to your own team. I need you to also be that player coach to one another, to communicate openly, to talk to each other on how you could partner better to add more value to the business. So, I think investing time in your team beyond the marketing hat, as Teresa said, which absolutely is a hat we all wear. I think that getting your team to really fire on all cylinders is incredibly important and, makes our jobs easy. It allows you to make yourself redundant over time.
I don't know about my colleagues, but I find myself spending more time on, the team dynamics and not core technology, right? So at this point, I'm not going to be expert in technology, and I depend on my leaders, on my team, to actually do the work that they're really good at. And I see my role as there to empower them and pave the path for them. So if there are any challenges, anything that they need to be successful, it's my role to kind of do that for them. I agree with Kelly completely that without a team, we're nothing, and it's important to build a very inclusive and equitable IT environment. And lately we've been very much focused on recruiting, retaining, and trying to develop a diverse IT workforce. As technology changes so quickly, I think our focus is going to be in upskilling and kind of reskilling our IT talent. Especially with the Great Resignation, we are paying a lot of attention to, how do we retain our employees and how do we make their time with us a fulfilling time. And employee engagement and fulfillment is becoming a priority, at least in my organization. But absolutely 100% depend on my team, and I have great leaders who I trust and hope that I can create the path for them to be successful.
I agree with both of you. I actually wanted Kelly to go first because I loved her. The team is everything. I didn't want to steal it from her. But anyways, I may in the future. I think, Lucy, you're right. I think it's really challenging right now to be in management, regardless of what function it is. There's a lot going on in the world today. And I would say historically, what I've found successful is really trying to create a great community within the department, but also a learning environment. I find that particularly technology personnel really love to always, have a chance to play with the latest and greatest technology, to try to experiment. So that R&D side is really important. And so we try to emphasize that at Lionsgate. On the community front, it has been a challenge, particularly since COVID. A lot of that came from face-to-face interaction. So, just trying to create a way for our team to not only have time, together, but also to really sort of supplement that connection they used to have with the business. I think that as leaders in our organization, it's really important that we connect the dots for them, right? So especially working remotely, they may not know what this business unit is challenged with, or what, if this person's working with that person. So really trying to not only tell them what's going on at the company, but kind of why it's important for our team, and trying to translate that and really communicate quite a bit around that, I think is really vital right now. But it's definitely challenging. And I think, and I'm growing and learning as part of this experience as well. Things that worked in the past for us may not work in the future. So we have to figure out a balance, right, between our employees getting the autonomy that they want, and then also, how we bring them in and make sure they're doing what's right for the business. So again, super important. Our teams are everything. Agree with everything that Kelly and Lucy said.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So one final question that I'm super curious about, and I think a lot of other people will be, who are either in the beginning, middle, or somewhere along their journey, is what do you wish you knew before you made it to where you are now? Hindsight's 2020, right? And looking back, how can you reflect on that?
I'll jump in first this time. really looking back to my early career, I will say that just because of the way that I was raised and or my mindset was, I was doing a great job, but I really wanted to be recognized, right? So I was sitting back and waiting to be recognized, to be promoted. And I would say that what I've learned over the course of my career is that part of that responsibility lies with me, right? I have to advocate for myself. I need to, and now that I'm on the other side of the desk, I realize that it's tough on your bosses. They have, several people they're working with. It's not always easy for them to know, where your headspace is and when you feel like you're ready for the next opportunity, right? So what I would say is, advocate for yourself, really make sure. You don't want to be the person that's asking for a promotion every year, right? But I think it is important to, in your performance reviews, what have you, to really point out, like, these are the accomplishments that my team and I made, and this is where I'm growing, and I've been thinking about it, and next year or 2 years from now, I'd like to, be able to do this, right? So help your management team to help you go where you want to go, because your career is your responsibility. It's not just something that your company or your boss is going to do for you. It's not always, written in stone. You go from here to here to here, right? So that's just something that I've learned and has benefited me throughout my career.
I can go. So two things. One, I wish I had the can-do attitude more in my career. And as I think back, to my 13-year-old self who barely spoke English and had just moved to this country, I would say that struggle is good. There were so many times that I was thinking, it's just way too hard and I can't take it anymore, and happened throughout my career, right? There were so many challenges. And instead of saying that I can't do it anymore, I'm tired, I'm gonna give up, just kind of say, bring it on, and I can do this, and I'm going to try to figure it out. And this should motivate me to really be creative about how to get to where I want to be. And the other thing that I wish that I was more comfortable and brave to stand up for myself and other women who were struggling in a male-dominated IT environment. Often, times I chose to kind of ignore those uncomfortable or unfair situations earlier in my career, and instead focused on my work. But I realized later that I wasn't really paving the right path for the women who had to go through the same journey. And it wasn't until about 10 years ago when I realized, I have no choice but to stand up and make sure that women in technology get adequate support, both emotional and financial, that they feel comfortable, competent, that are treated fairly, that are included in conversations and have a voice in the organization. So I think, I wish I knew that before. I ignored it. I wasn't brave enough to stand up for it.
Lucy, I think that's fascinating. It's incredibly important, I think, that we do what we can to, to be brave, to step up and say those things. But I think, honestly, I don't fault both myself, you, others. We all have moments where, gosh, that's real tough. And then, I think the piece of advice I'd give folks is find sponsors. It's great to have mentors. They will mentor you. They'll give you great feedback, but they're not advocating for you. And there's a real difference there between someone who's willing to not just mentor you and give you feedback, but be your advocate in the rooms you're not in. Help advocate that you are ready to take on that challenge. So you get that opportunity to stretch yourself and be a little scared, that they're there to help you when you're stumbling and kind of like, ooh, I don't know if I can do this. Like, I'm really worried. This isn't going well. It's not just that, let me give you some advice, throw it over the fence at you and hope that helps. They'll get in there with you. You don't get a lot of those in a career. It's not like you're going to go with this Rolodex of 20 people who you have that with. Find the one or two and really cultivate that deep relationship, because they will, it pays dividends in so many ways. Having that person, and it may not be your boss, by the way, it may be someone else lateral to you, or senior to you in the organization, but in another team, another department. But they are there. They'll know about how things work that maybe you just haven't learned yet, you haven't seen yet, and they can really do a ton to help you. So I feel like I came late to the party and just really understanding that relationship, not just a mentor. Early it's like, get a mentor. Great, I got a mentor. I didn't understand that other relationship and the importance of having it.
Amazing. So thank you so much. That last question, I think, really summed up why we're all here. So thank you for sharing. We're all looking for networking and support and building that community amongst women that we can go to, our peers, or sponsors or mentors or whichever it might be, but other people who are also in the same situation, and in the tech industry as females and eager to grow and see what else is out there. So I'm going to let our famous Jim Rinaldi give some final closing remarks, and then we'll go to any questions that you all might have.
Well, I have to tell you what a terrific panel, and the experiences that you guys have shared has just been terrific. I did post a question, Piper, so hopefully you'll get to ask that. And so all I want to do is say that this is going to be hard to top, but we do have future events, and we'll share those at the very end, a list of those. And we look forward to seeing this kind of audience again. And more WIT events as well are coming. So stay tuned as we look for the future. Piper, I think we have some time for questions. So I think it'll be very interesting to hear what people have on their mind. But I do want to let you know I did post one question.
Awesome. I saw your question. It's actually the first one. So we'll address it. But once again, thank you so much for sharing. Both of you three women are inspirational. So it's really exciting to be able to hear your journeys and to get the opportunity to ask you questions. There's lots of other inspirational women on here. So this is an exciting group. As Jim was saying, that there are future events, which we'll touch on, that are continuations of this series to see other paths of how women got to the quote unquote top. Might not be CIO, might be owner, president of company. So there's different paths you can take, as we all know. So we're going to highlight those in the next couple series. But let's start with the questions. I know Andriana is going to help me, but I do see Jim's first question. So we'll start out with that, Jim. Who and what influenced your style of management? Good question. Coming from a CIO, I like it.
I'll jump in because I will say that my style of management was heavily influenced by my father. Still one of the smartest people I ever met, very much an engineer, but also a real people person. So I did learn a lot from him. I will also say that I worked for some pretty challenging bosses on my way up, and I learned like how to be a better boss by not being like them. That's okay to say that. And then when I was at Lionsgate, going through that whole process with Leo Collins, who was the CIO before me, he mentored me, and it was great to kind of go into a job knowing that the game plan was for me to be his successor. And it was like an open door. He talked to me about everything at the company and everything that he did. So I had like a 7-year learning experience. So he had a lot of influence on me as well, just because he was a man with still is a man with a great sense of humor. Many of you guys might know him, and he really brought humor into the workplace. And that was, something that he still does better than me, but I try to incorporate that as well and have fun during our work time. So those are some of my influences.
Amazing. Anyone else want to share?
I think similar to what Teresa said, I've had great leaders, the 2 CFOs in my former organization and my former boss. But I also have learned from leaders who I wasn't very fond of what not to do. So I totally understand that, Teresa. And I've worked with so many leaders, and you learn something from every one of them, and you kind of craft the way that you're going to be successful but authentic in how you lead.
Amazing.
I'll go ahead and chime in too.
Okay.
Funny, I love Teresa. I was thinking like my dad was really the start, and it's funny. It's a mix of my dad. My dad was an executive at Chevron, and it's just myself, and I have an older sister. So there was no son in the family. So I became the de facto son in some ways. They would do the divide and conquer, and I went to Home Depot and did the woodworking project. That's how we rolled. And I remember, gosh, he taught me all sorts of these. I remember I was probably 12. He was teaching me the concept of like, you never want to build or burn bridges in life. Like, even if we're real angry about something, you don't burn the bridge. Like, this is how you manage it, which what 12-year-old girl needs this, by the way? But that's what I got. Like, that was the chat over dinner table with my dad growing up. My mom, interestingly, she was actually a stay-at-home mom. But what she did by the way, she sells herself short, up, down, left, and right, which was a what not to do. One of the best at advocating for herself, though, in a way that I actually don't know many people who do it as well as she does. She's great at it. In some ways, I will acknowledge as a teenager, not always that I liked, right? Like, super embarrassing as a teenager when your mom's out there just ruthlessly advocating. But she was great at it. So those two, and then for me, it was actually, the degree in philosophy specializing in ethics, I can't help but focus deeply on how do I think about what I'm doing, the choices I'm making, and balancing conflicting priorities or interests. There's very, very rarely a right and wrong in life. It's a lot of shades of gray. It's a lot about prioritization. And how do you balance and think about those things actually informs a ton of my leadership style. It's this constant like mulling over, okay, how do you think about these different situations you're in and make what you think is the best choice for your organization at that moment in time, given the information you've got available. And then beyond that, yeah, it's this different leaders along the way you've had a chance to work with, and you kind of pick up pieces of them and you become your own blend of all of those great things you've seen, maybe some of the less good things that you decided, nope, I'm going to X that. I don't want to adopt those sorts of practices, to bring it into something that kind of fits for you. Because, we all are who we are, and we're all malleable to a certain extent, but there are certain leaders that even if I think they're great, I couldn't ever lead with that style because it would be so uncomfortable for me. So I don't know. I think that's been my strategy and approach over time, I suppose.
Awesome. Great answers. Okay. So the next question from ours truly, Davita Johnson. The question is, there's so much to learn, so many areas to focus growth. How do you decide which path to go when you have limited time? Great question, because who has time anymore?
The feedback. I mean, I'm incredibly privileged. My current boss is great about this. We have a wonderful, he tells me if he hears anything from the organization, he sees something like, hey, I don't think that worked. Or, sounds like this area is, kind of grumpy right now. What are we doing about it? And that helps at least prioritize what to work on, at least for me.
So I will say that I allow myself to be curious as well as my team, right? So I do think that as just as part of my day-to-day job, I'm always looking at new technologies, new trends. And if I'm curious about something, I let myself dive in. And it may or may not end up being something that we do as an organization, but that's what kind of keeps me interested in technology and motivated about my job and I'm trying to bring my strategic part to the table as well, right, with the business leaders. So I do allow myself time to dive in on the things that are of interest to me. And I think, it's all about, it's managing your schedule, time boxing, whatever you want to call it, right? But I do build that into my schedule so that I can, otherwise, like if you're always focused on all the top priorities of the day, then you just never have time to get to some of that stuff. And it's really very interesting. So that's how I deal with it.
Amazing.
I'd agree with Teresa. I think there's just so much that's changing in our industry, and to keep up with things, I try to spend some time over the weekend to just kind of catch up on my reading. But then if I'm really passionate about something, then I'll do more research and I'll ask around and reach out to colleagues and see what they're doing with that. But also things that bring joy. I'll look into that. If I'm really, really passionate about things, I'll look into it.
Great. Wonderful. Okay, so a couple more questions. One of the speakers mentioned servant leadership. How would you describe leadership style today, and how has this changed from being a manager to the leadership role you have today? Great question. Highlights different needs at different times.
I mean, I think everyone has a natural style. I was fortunate earlier in my career. During one of those, earlier in your career, you're a new manager. I had a chance to do a training where they looked at, I don't know, I think they surveyed us and they watched us and they did a whole bunch of stuff. And then they told us who you were. And they had this continuum of like the micromanager versus the delegator with a whole bunch of flavors in the middle. And, to me, no matter how senior you get, there's always moments where you've got to flex your style. You've got to flex being maybe a little bit more directive versus being able to be much more of that kind of coach, mentor, servant leader, which is, by the way, it's my natural preference. I think you get the best out of people that way. But that also assumes that you've got the two things. You've got clarity of vision, you've got competence. If you have a team that doesn't have the competence yet, doesn't mean that they're not capable, they won't get there, but maybe they don't have it yet. You don't get the luxury of being able to be as delegatory or as much of a collaborative servant leader as you'd like. You do have to step in and be a little more directive while those members build that skill set. And so it's kind of recognizing that there's those different opportunities. And by the way, even as an early manager, you've got one or two analysts under you. If they're incredibly capable and competent and you're all aligned on what you're doing, you could afford to be a servant leader very early. It doesn't, to me, it's not about the stage in your career trajectory you're at, what your leadership style may need to be. It's more about the specific situation. And at any one time, even now, there are certain parts of what I'm doing that I'm kind of at the complete extreme of the team knows what they're doing. And frankly, I don't know what they're doing all the time, and that's okay. Whereas there's other things in this moment in time, I am being more directive because it's something that is new for a team member, or it's a challenge for a team member. And, to help them in the early stage, you act as more a crutch when you are a little more directive. And that's okay too, as long as you're doing it thoughtfully and consciously, and you're not just defaulting to one thing all the time that maybe isn't going to work in that situation.
Great answer. All right, on to the next question, which speaks highly of all three of you. Executive presence and public speaking is important for career progression. For those who view public speaking like going to the dentist, what are some tools that you acquire to become the amazing speakers and leaders you are today? How have you helped others acquire these skills? So yes, I think you all three possess this quality and have done a wonderful job. So maybe you can shed some light for everyone.
I mean, I'm most comfortable when I'm speaking about something I really know and understand. So I would say I'm always nervous a lot. Like a lot of times I'll do panels. If I don't know all the questions, I'm a bit more nervous, right, than if I practice beforehand. So for me, I like to know in advance. I like to practice and be prepared. So that is what helps me. I will say at Lionsgate, we have a lot of programs for our employees around public speaking. That's something our HR group is offering. And I think it's great, right? I would love to have some of those programs when I was earlier in my career. But yeah, I think that's what works for me is I practice and preparation.
Great. Anyone want to add, or should we roll to the next question?
I mean, if you're really serious about getting better, record yourself. It's miserable. I hate it. But you get no, I mean, we are all our own worst critic. And if, this is recorded. And if I really wanted to work on this skill set, I would go watch this recording, perhaps with someone I trusted, and have them nitpick it. That's a big if. I'm not telling you I'm going to do that, but it is a great way to continue to refine. You'll notice, like I say that word a lot, or I do this, or I sound really unsure of myself. And then you can work on these things over time. So if you're super serious about it, that would be my suggestion for you. But no, it's miserable for most people.
I agree. I think, Thomas, you're very kind with your words. I still struggle with it every time. I do enjoy sharing stories and helping others, but it is not, it's not easy. I used to, when I was driving to work, I used to like in the car, kind of put together my thoughts and speak out loud and kind of go through it, just the same way Kelly is suggesting recording and listening. But now I don't get to do that either. So now what I try to do is tell my story and just be very open and authentic and let it just happen.
Wow, that's awesome. And what an interesting thread that here 3 amazing CIO speakers all quote unquote struggle with it, or, it's a challenge. So good message here. Don't feel alone. There are some tools and apps and stuff too that can help with it'll rate your speaking as you go. And just a side note, a couple other really good questions. I think these are going to be probably the last 2. Okay, next question, Anthony. Thank you. With new technologies and needs arising constantly, what keeps you up at night?
I mean, I would say right now, in this moment, I guess cybersecurity always keeps me up at night. So that's kind of, there's new threats all the time. So that's always something that's evolving. And I don't lose as much sleep now as I did when I first was promoted to CIO, but that's only because I've kind of gotten used to it. The other thing right now that is very challenging is resources, right? And, there's just a lot going on in the job market. Finding the right resources and keeping those resources are a challenge, I think, for every organization. So those are the 2 areas right now that I am concerned about, I would say, most often.
Amazing. All right, we'll roll to the final question. Thank you, Chita. So I will just go ahead and share what she wrote. Dare I flippantly say, no one has done more for women in tech than the persona of COVID-19. Remote working, flexible work hours, support for education, retooling, kids making appearances in Zooms or dogs. Do you think these vital needs for women and families are here to stay? And do you feel a direct charge to maintain these benefits? Great question. Very relevant.
I had a benefit of being on the committee that was rethinking the workplace of the future for UCLA. And I think we could all say that workplace and our workforce is evolving, and it's not going to go back to where we were in 2019. And so kind of rethinking that and how do we be more flexible, provide our team members autonomy and the conditions that they're seeking to be part of this organization, I think is very important. One thing I could say is that I plan to continue offering flexible remote working engagements for my team. In fact, 70% of my organization currently is 100% remote, and I don't plan to change that. Unless there's a significant impact to our productivity or to the morale. So we will continuously assess that. But I feel like nowadays it's so difficult to retain our talent and recruit our technologists that we need to be flexible and we need to allow for this to continue, especially for women.
So I agree with you. I think that there's a lot of benefits for the individuals that have come out of the pandemic. I do think that, the cat is out of the bag, so to speak, and employees have much more power than they did in the past. So I do see, this new way of work staying and continuing. But I also think that it is challenging for certain roles. So I think it is really dependent on your role and on your organization, because you may end up working for an organization where, being in the office in person is highly valued, and you may have to, that's a give and take kind of situation. You may have to make a choice to be there in order to get ahead, right? So right now we're still, especially in Los Angeles, I think a lot of companies are still not quite back to work. I think it'll be very interesting once we do get to a point where people are going truly hybrid. We're in the workplace a couple of days a week, and kind of seeing how your organization evolves and how you can stay connected and really move ahead in the new workplace. So I would agree with you, but I think we still got some more change to come.
So to me, the question was fascinating. I love, this is the ultimate silver lining in a dark cloud kind of a perspective, which I love. That's my default. But look, I also really empathize with the significant contingent of women who've dropped out of the labor force because of this. So it hasn't been great for everybody. It's been great for some folks. So this is not to diminish the wonderful advantages and benefits some folks have had. But actually for other folks, it's been a real challenge. I've got members of my team who absolutely want the flexibility going forward. And we're taking much more of a case by case, because I think Teresa made a great point. Some roles, there is a real benefit to being in person sometimes. Other roles, maybe there's less benefit. And so you think about it in a differentiated way. It's what are the company's needs? What are the team's needs? What are the individual's needs? And do we have a situation where we can have something that's going to work with all those things? I mean, we were very fortunate. We had a telecommuting program and then pilot before the pandemic ever hit. So, there were degrees of flexibility afforded to certain employee groups, because there are other employees at the company who, frankly, if you run the store on the lot, real tough to do that, right? Like you are physically checking people out. I don't know what to say. It's not going to be a particularly great remote opportunity for you. But I think about it as, what are those different needs? And I do have people who, I was talking to a gentleman who helps run our Ariba application, and he's got a newborn and a 2-year-old at home. He's miserable. That man wants to be back in the office yesterday. And, when the caseload was spiking, we actually said, look, any and all employees who do not absolutely have to be in person, please do not come. We want to do our part to manage the outbreak. And he was just like, I just want to come to the office. Can I please come? Because for him, it's really hard to work from home right now. This isn't an enjoyable experience. And, that happens to be a man, but I don't think that there's not women who are in the exact same boat. So to me, you've got to look at both the company, the team, and the individual and the role and figure out what makes sense. And it's tough to paint this with a broad brush.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your insights and sharing. That concludes the questions. I am now going to pass this along to Jim and then Rafi to wrap it all up. Thank you so much, everyone. I really appreciate you all being here and getting involved in this community going forward.
And thank you, Piper, and thank you, panel. You were outstanding. And there was a word that probably wasn't used enough today, is inspirational. And the fact that there's so many of our members and so many of our participants today that are inspirational. And this is what we want at Innovate to be able to do, to highlight leaders like yourselves, to inspire others to overcome whatever they have to overcome, and to network so that you can build your own relationships and community. And that's the power of Innovate at UCLA. So I invite everyone to join us for future events as seen on the screen, and also to fill out the survey that Rafi has shared. And we look forward to your feedback, and we hope to have something near this next time in terms of our panel and our content. And thank you all so much, and we look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you.